started. For folks who are watching on the uh, on the YouTube VOD, I forgot to record the last stream I did. Doesn't happen very often, but it happens once in a while. So you just missed me generating this big to-do list and a couple other things that I got done. So I put in characters, special characters for each of my characters, right? So we've got the captain, the medic, the wizard, and the rogue. And then uh, if we step forward here, we'll find we can go into these encounters and deal damage, get hit back. We can't see all the tiles that are on these characters just with the visualization, and the hearts are a little off. Like I don't love this setup visually right now, but that's what I've got so far. And so the goal at this point today, I think, is going to be to just put in some animation. So, well, you can't really see what's happening except who's taking hits. It's kind of the same thing as my log has always been. I can see the state at the beginning of each machine state. I can see the state of all the entity, all the tiles they have in this log format, and now I can see it in the visual format, but it's the same information. It does not show any of the information about what decisions are getting made or how the moves actually play out. Like, who did it hit? Did it affect their hearts, or did it just take away a protected tile? There's all sorts of stuff like that you cannot see between the states right now, because I just stop at each state and I don't do anything with the in between. So today my goal is going to be to start working on the animation system for the next couple of hours. Give me one sec. A little grossed out by the smudges on my draw there and wanted to clean it up. So, animations. It's not going to be complicated. First things first. Right now, what happens is there's not even a time when animations would happen. So I want to start by getting that introduced. When I do SimStep, I move the simulation forward into a new state. And it then, when it comes time to see it, we just see the sim state graphics happening here. Man, it's close. I'd love to get these blocks separated out into buttons soon. This is a render layer. Yeah, lots of stuff to get to. But for animation, what's going to have to happen is this is how we draw the fixed scene. I'm going to pull that out. It's a higher level function. Which should be possible without any parameters because the app variables are all globally accessible. And drawing the scene is just a matter of putting the characters in the right place for now. So that's all of this. App draw scene. That does not do anything to the floors or walls. those still happen automatically. Um, but what I do want to do is say if we are in an animation state, we should be able to know it right here. So why don't we put that in app vars? Um, and so updating the animation is kind of just as simple as going like, okay, if um, for now we'll figure out that we're animating by just seeing that the animation t is greater than 0, and then we'll add in a delta t. The delta t can be do we have a FPS kind of thing sitting around? Actually, we don't. My first time doing anything animation like. With the system, FPS, is that sitting around in here? It's not even here. Here we get frames per second. 6 per frame. There we go. Then we can determine how long we want the animation to go for. Um, we could just say we want it to go for 1 second for now. Okay, so for now, I'm gonna need to do how do I want to do this? I can't actually use draw string here because I don't have Graphics. We need it's a couple things we need. There's an aliasing thanks to debuffer. Then there's I need some kind of I think I need some kind of like darkness effect. I need a like a depth fog kind of effect. Maybe those are the same thing. And I need to be able to draw text in 3D space. Okay, so for now, I think we have to do this over here. Okay, so this doesn't even go here because of the fact that text has to go here. Increment the animation, draw the animation. This is going to be here later, but for now it's just going to go here. App, draw, string, app, draw, set text align, 0.5, 0.5, app, draw color, canvas dim.x, canvas dim.y, and then what we'll do is we'll set the alpha manually with alpha equals unlerp. No, we're going from 0 to 1 already. Well, yeah, I want to unlerp because I don't want it to go right away. It's like 0.333 to 1.0, 1.f, there we go, on the animation time. So between the 1/3 of a second and the full second, it'll become 0 to 1. Below 1/3 of a second, it will become negative because of that. So I'm also going to clamp. And now nothing happens because no one ever sets animation T. So when I do sim step with this, I want to also set the app NMT to 0, just a little bit past the 0 point, right? Just start the animation. So boom. Man, it feels very delayed. Let me fix that when I come back. What is this? um it's not like this is instant, so it's not like a frame rate issue, right? Unless it is a frame rate issue with updating the simulation. Is the simulation update really that slow? Seems crazy. So like, if I do this, that happened right away though. Like the change to the hearts is also instant, so that can't be it. Why? Oh, it fades in instead of out. Ugh, right. There we go. Okay, so that's cool, but now the real problem begins. If I really wanted to animate, I would need to know the state that I'm coming from and the state that I'm going to. Even if it's just in microscopic steps, I might not need to know the simulation states on either end, although that could help too. But I at least need to know what state I'm landing at and where everything is currently at. Right? Um, but I also need to know more. I also want to know the stuff in between. So this is starting to run into this idea that I'm going to need some kind of a structured log of what happened during the simulation that I can examine to figure out what I want to display. And I'm thinking there's so many places where to get started on that. I could just start the log here in the graphics main and kind of iterate on it here before me making it part of the simulator's code. And that would mean basically whatever I've already got access to. So the states at each point in time, I can see them and save them here in the log that the graphics side keeps and use that log to get started. And then if I like it, I can upgrade that into the simulator, or it might turn out that that log reveals that it's hard to bake into the simulator the way I'm expecting. Honestly, to get all of this working right at this point, I might have to build a real entity system. I might have to build I'm probably going to end up having to construct a new data structure and tweak out a bunch of the current structures to be able to reference entities and protos and logs all with a stable ID system. Another layer of the problem is that what I actually want to show for like the journey isn't even here yet. Like I'd have to actually spend some time building another perspective. The whole thing with the like the characters in 3D space that's like semi pretend to scale. You know, it's still pixel art, but it's meant to evoke a sense of being to scale. But when they're on their journey, I actually kind of want to show like them going across a map kind of thing, you know? Like we shouldn't actually it should be an icon of the characters, not the actual not a representation of the characters in this like battle theater that the encounters take place in. So The transition between them would be actually an animation of like a screen transition, a wipe or Pokeballs going like this or whatever. Except not Pokeballs in this case, but you know what I'm talking about. The beginning of an encounter can be a screen transition, probably, or something like that. So I don't need to worry about things like dancing the characters around or moving them through a large environment. That's not the animation that's missing. I think what I want to be able to do is just say, we're printing the word animating here. What if instead I showed, let's make the next goal be to show some text that describes what happened. Okay? So what could that text be? Let me take a look. I'm gonna look at the log of the text version of the state at the bottom to help me see this. Okay. Okay. So let's do it this way. I think something like that should do it. Paging Turner, hey. Yeah, me too. I hope it goes well. Log. Is that right? All right, so the machine now keeps a counter and increments it every time we take a step, so we will always know which portions of the log correlate with which parts of the simulation we've completed. Now, when the player decisions occur, moves bot brains. Branch. Okay, here we get a brain use code back from the bot brain. This is where I'm going to add in a structured log for the first time. If structured logging, then RPG log record, structured log push, context, okay. Player decision equals. Finally, I want to do something that gets party state. These are party states. And so I should be able to say each of them has a string on them. So I should be able to, okay, there it is. It's just name from party state ID, actually. Maze generation. So what kind of rules are your mazes going to follow? Are you generating mazes with a grid and putting solid blocks into the cells, or are you generating a maze with a grid and then putting walls on the edges of the cells? Okay. That just says animating. Because structured log set state. So we turn on structured logging when we're doing graphical visualizations. Ha 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 ha. Okay, so name goes here for player decision. So here's where things get interesting. I can look at the log. And what we'll do is we'll say, okay, instead of animT gets set no matter what happens is we look at the log and we say, if the, let's grab the context here. I'm gonna work right on the context to figure this out for now. If the context counter, if the app's record is 0, well, okay, very first thing, if the context log record first does not equal 0, so if we have some structured log information, now if the record equals 0, then the record equals the first spot, and we run the animation. So we can go app, record, player decision. And then journey travel. And now it's stuck on that first record forever. So let's go farther. They're good, right? They're good sprites. It's going to be hard to make it look that good when I try to get the art done separately. It's going to take real work. They're nice. So, if we do have a record, okay. First, new animation equals 1. We are just breaking ground on a big pile of nonsense right now. There's so much we don't know about how we want this to work, but it's going to have to grow in sophistication from a tiny little starting point. Okay, so if we're not in that case, we do have a record. If our record, also all of this should be if animT is 0. Right, if we're already animating, then we don't need to be doing this. But if we're not animating, but we see that there could be some information to look at regarding animation, we check and see if we can go to the next animation yet. Now, if the app record does not equal the last record, then the app record equals the next record. New animation equals 1. Seems like a good start. Okay. So, they travel. They don't make any decisions, so no animation occurs. They decide to fight. They also decide to fight, so we get 2 animations there because I don't have them going simultaneously yet. They're out. So we can't see any of the moves that are tile moves yet, but we're getting there. They camp. Cool. Okay. Well, I mean, it's kind of a start. So what are some ways we could work on fixing this? One is, let me refresh the simulation. Ooh, that's not normal. What just happened there? Refresh the simulation. Press A. Nothing happens. Say again, nothing happens. Finally, encounter, fight, encounter, fight. That part works. Fight, encounter, fight. If I press A again, they've already moved on. Now it's working. I refresh. They missed the first decision somehow. How is resetting not fixing? I think I know. RPG context reset. If we're gonna do a reset, we also need to reset this local pointer here. Oh no, the captain. The medic brings him back. But we can't see it because it's a move that happens. Not a not a state or a player decision that we've figured out how to log yet. So that's getting started. Next up, let's think about there's this issue where, okay, right here, they're both going to do encounter fight. So it's going to trigger, it's going to put 2 player decisions in the log, both for the same, with the same counter. But it's going to play them one after the other. First this one, then that one. It won't play them together. It'll play this one and then this one. And the reason it will do that is because all it's programmed to do right now is look at the current record, animate it, and then if there's a next one, go to it. This causes 2 different flavors of problems compared to, because it's not matching what I actually would like to get to. One is it should be able to find multiple things that all happened at the same time and handle them together appropriately. And second, it should be, it's gonna mean that if I press A again, if I say advance the state while an animation is already happening, that it's gonna start getting ahead, right? If I do this, it's now running the encounter fight animation and the journey travel animation before it finally catches up to where we are in the graphics. Now, that's partly because this is super rudimentary and I haven't got the graphics synced up with the animations yet. They're kind of just 2 separate disconnected systems so far. But there's a second issue, which is even if I ignore what's happening with the characters on the screen and just think about that animating text, if I'm sitting here watching a cutscene or watching through a series of animations that are all simulated, there's no player decisions, it's just hit next, hit next, hit next. If I spam it, I want it to skip, right? I want it to go, oh, we were playing the animation to go from A to B, but they've already hit the button to advance to C, so we've got to skip to B and then start playing the animation to C, right? Something like that. Or it's got to accelerate through this part, like it's got to run at quadruple speed or something to just get to the end of the current one and not lag behind too far. Or it's got to say, if you are pressing A, you have to be done with the animation already before it can actually continue. Then you're stuck waiting for the animation. Or it could be like, if you press A while the animation's going on, it just ends the animation, and then the next one advances you. Or it could be that A only works when the animation is done, but B skips the animation. So you can do B to skip the animation, A to advance, B to skip animation, A to advance. I don't know what would be best in terms of the exact flow on the controls. It's a little hard to say, but I definitely don't have good control over this in the code yet. So we could work on that either way. A good test case. A good test case that would hit a lot of, like, give me it's something that would give the code all the powers that it needs, would probably be something like the one where when I press A, it has to figure out how to skip the current animation if there's still one going. I think that gives me all the powers that I need. It gives the ability to skip animations and and in particular to skip animations to the correct point for the next state to occur. I don't know. Maybe I just want to say when you press A, if we're in the middle of an animation from state A to B, then you cannot advance from, you can go from B to C, like you've sent the command to go from B to C, and that gets processed. But we then are going to accelerate the animation to get to B fast, and until we get to B, you cannot advance past C when we haven't started the animation from B to C yet. That's another way I could think about it, right? So that would involve the ability to speed up animations and or skip them, because skipping them would just be a matter of speeding them up infinitely, right? Not that different. But it would also mean knowing which animation you're in and comparing that to what state the machine is in and being able to control that differential clearly, right? So just thinking through how that would go. Here is an encounter round. They each need to make a decision about what they're going to do. When I press A, they're both going to decide to fight. If I press A again, that would mean this happened more rapidly, and then we got to this. Okay. My plan is that I'm just going to say you have to wait for the animations for now. And the reason for that is all these things are very much tied in with some powers that I don't have yet that I need for another reason. Anyways, which is to get the animations and the characters actually synced up. And I think that that's actually the right place to start. I'll show you what I mean in a minute. But I think that all the other stuff I'm thinking about doing really only works after I've done some building blocks that are easier from a different perspective. So sim step requires that the app animT be 0. We can't be in the middle of an animation if we're going to step ahead. So now it looks like this. Oops, that looked like it still didn't work. Yeah, it's not working. Oh, this is an or right here and the precedence. Okay. We still have a first aid kit. Oh boy. Captain is dying, but our medic brings him back with a first aid kit. Very cool. And time to camp. Wizard sure to put protection on the captain. There are definitely spots here where our human player will play better than these bots do. Some of it's just because I don't have the bot scripting for targeting a move yet. But anyway, so that's doing the trick. Now, yeah, so the hard part here, as I'm thinking this through, is that in order for this to work, it's not just good enough. It's not good enough to just have counters in the log records. I'm gonna need the ability to say, "Here's a counter. Give me the state of the world from this moment." Right? If I want to be able to do something like going all the way back in time, at least. And the problem with that is there's nothing saving those right now. I mutate the entities directly by mutating the tile boards that they contain, right? And there's no unwind, there's no undo on that. So my options are I could build an undo stack. Like I could literally do this like a text editor or any other kind of application with an undo stack where every time a change in the state happens, I record it with the ability to unwind, but then once you've unwound, you've lost where you were. I could do like a serialization of the state. So I could have checkpoints where I say I'm going to serialize out the whole state here, and then the log has to be sufficiently detailed to reconstruct the entire path, right? If I have the state of the random number generator and all of the entities and all of the player decisions, that should be enough to reconstruct what happened. As long as you have the same code that you had before too, right? So that would mean that I can make a sort of rewind, not an undo, but a go back to a previous state that would just be based on being able to deserialize an old state and then the ability to apply deltas. And then I would need stable log or entity IDs so that if I look at two different states that are next to each other, I can see. So basically, what's tricky about all this is the simulation runs to a certain point and the states change immediately. And then I render off of those states, but I actually want to, in the animation, play out each of the events more slowly. I could just stop the simulation at each move, right? I already stop it when the player decisions occur. So I could, for instance, gather up the player decisions and animate them. And then when I'm done animating them, run to the next player decision. Run through each of the moves. In the case of moves, you run through each of the player decisions in the case of branches. That would mean I'd have to get ready to do the thing where I'm going to be able to pause and resume the move queue. Right now, I play all the moves at once, but the simulator sooner or later is going to have the ability to stop on one move anyways, because I want that mechanically as well, so that I can have a move that interrupts the current situation and creates a, another machine on the stack that has to be resolved first. And then when you return to the context that you left, you still have the rest of the moves to play out. um, man, there's a lot to do on this front. Um, um, man, there's a lot of ways to go about trying to structure this, and they're all kind of hard. I think that what I mean, ultimately, I think that my ambition for certain aspects of both the core rule set and the simulator will require essentially a complete undo history tree. Like you want to be able to just restore an old state exactly. Which makes me think that the right first step is to just learn how to completely serialize and deserialize the context of the machine. And forget about the part where player moves need to be identical every time you do that. I think that the next puzzle to solve is just how we want to do serialization, possibly an entity system. And yeah, I'm saying all that has to happen before animations can be done correctly, which is a bummer because it's a lot of core work again. But that isn't that surprising. I know that the entity system has been an issue that I have avoided and confronting since the beginning of the rewrite, because I wanted to wait until I had some real constraints on what I wanted out of entities, and so maybe I mean, the really bold thing to do would be to say we need to build up a tile board system and a proper entity system, and then a serialization and a deserialization system. And then we can get on with animations properly. Which means it's probably a couple weeks or months before we get back to the animations for real. I mean, actually just doing a serialize isn't that bad. If we did that by itself without fixing the entity system or doing a tile board data structure, we could still just do serialize, deserialize, and we could do something really, really simple, like keep a complete serialized version of every state all the way through. The one thing you don't get if I don't do an entity system too is that if I look at two states, previous state, next state, and I say, and I see here some entities and I see here some entities, I don't necessarily know how to correlate them if I don't also have a stable entity ID system across time, right? If deserializing and reserializing it means that I end up with pointers and if things rearrange differently, the third character in the party becomes the second because one of the other ones died. You know, there's just issues would come up with trying to do the correlation. So, um, the only other option that I can think of is to control the simulation with a smaller granularity. So if I say go to the next step, I might, right now I'm always going to the next player decision state. But what if I say, okay, I'm at a player decision state, which means when I say go to the next step, I want to see all the player decisions being animated. And then if I get to the end of seeing that, where am I at? I'm then I've seen player decisions and moves. I would then end up at right. Okay, so yeah, the other way I could do animation quicker and easier right now is if I were to control the timing of it in relationship to the simulation step by step. So what I mean by that is I can say we're currently in player decision mode. So we're stopped until we press A. Once we press A series of animations happens, and each animation is a result. So we take one step forward, not a loop to the next player decision, but just complete the player decisions, see if there were any player decision records, and animate those if there were. If there weren't, then we're ready to move ahead to the next decision immediately. But if there are, we play them first before continuing even further, right? So now the animation timing is going to play into the sim step rule a little bit more heavily, and sim step can't just run to the next player decision. Instead, it has to say, like, okay, if we're on a player decision, we can do this, but if we are in an animation, we have to wait, and then when the animation completes, we can run further. Sim step. Let's try it that way. And the reason I want to try it that way is even if this isn't quite the right final structure, because things will be better when I have a real entity ID system and a real history, like a log that I can look through, and serialization and deserialization, the ability to restore old states. All of that will be great to have. But it will still need to know some kind of logical sense of what I did here will still appear, I think. Like, there will still be something like understanding that we're animating between player decision moment and we haven't arrived at the next state yet. And so we're in the transition between this and this, which is animating some data that came out through this log of the player decision. That whole structure will still be real, even if I'm allowing that the simulation runs all the way to the next player decision in the final version. I'll still need to say that the animation system keeps a cursor that only skips ahead by certain amounts, and the amounts that it should skip ahead by will, like in chunks, will correlate with the simulation control, the direct control over simulation timing that I do here and now, right? Basically, what is truly controlling the simulation here will get replaced with indexes inspecting simulation logs later, but it'll still have the same basic logical relationship between the points of the simulation where you want to have that you consider places where you sort of stop, or fix points in the simulation that you consider endpoints of animations. Those will still correlate with the animations in the same way. So let's try it that way. Sim step. Right now the rule is if the stack is not empty, good. Then step the machine. Good. If the stack is empty, we're done. If the stack isn't empty and we've arrived at player decisions, we're done. That's not what I want anymore. What I want is sim step only runs if we started off at player decisions, and its job is to perform a single step and nothing else. Finish player decision. So this would be more like, instead of sim step, this would be more like app sim get player decisions. But this one doesn't want to be sim get player decisions. This is after we initialize the simulation. And what we want here is going to be sim run or something like that. And it'll stop. So sim runs until so this one is like get the context if the stack is not empty, and if the loop state is not player decisions, then run and stack is empty break. Actually, we could do this without needing to do it this way. We could just stack is empty, we break if machine frame loop state is player decisions. Well, we actually kind of want a distinction between the moments when we are just saying, okay, run ahead to the next state, and we're waiting for player decisions. Maybe this correlates with the idea that once there's a human interface for making player decisions, you kind of have to wait for that. You can't just you can't just have the running loop blow past the next player decision. And so the way this could end up being interpreted is that this is the one that you do when you're past a player decision and you just run through everything. And this is the one that you have to call because you're saying this is like the method of completing a player decision, right? This is currently saying get player decisions. But this could actually be more like submit player decisions, right? We're waiting for a decision that the human player makes. The only way this isn't quite right is that I'm also going to want to chunk up the run so that it's not necessarily the case that it has to run until a player decision. It might run until it might do something like run until a move gets run, and then each move wants an animation and stuff like that. And so you'll keep running it right now, but what would happen in the final version is you'd run once and you'd advance through the log of what happened to run the simulations. In order to advance through the log, each step of the log needs to allow you to reconstruct all the state from that moment. Okay, so when we init, we set up the rules and run. Okay. Now the only remaining issue is if we complete an animation, render sim state. Okay, here's where we update the animation and draw the animation if we have one. So um okay, so here if we are done animating and we have some records, we check to see if we can start a new animation. If we didn't, then we check again and we say, okay, well, if we didn't start a new animation, then we're done animating. So now let's run the simulation to the next stopping point. Okay, now I press A and nothing happens. Here we get player decisions if that was working. If that was working and then there were no new things in the log, it should just run to the next player decision. Let's try the debugger here. Graphics main 717. Yeah, it's not hitting it. Very odd that it's not hitting it because that's not 0. I get it. Okay, so that's close, except when we come here, we want to actually see if there really are decisions. Similarly, we want to see that here. Okay. Well, that's a decent start. That's kind of how it works. I think that for the animation system, to do this part, we're gonna have to upgrade the to support move, cue, pause, resume. I think that's it for now. Like I said, short morning stream today. That's it. All I've got for this week. We're kind of at the end of getting the whole simulator up and running to the point that it was sophisticated enough that I felt it was ready to start fusing in with the graphics. And I think the timing was right. But this moment of fusing in with the graphics is immediately surfacing a whole bunch of new to-dos. And so it's not going to be feasible to keep making tons of progress quickly. Instead, I think I'm going to take the weekend and possibly most of next week to decompress from this and think about what's next for this project. Maybe we'll spend a little time, we'll pull up some C scripting stuff. There's plenty to make progress on that. Maybe play with another research project and keep this a little low key, keep this project low key for a couple of weeks while I process exactly what the next steps are going to look like. But before long, I think the next big thing is probably going to have to be a proper entity system structure, proper state serialization, deserialization, and getting this structured log in really good shape. Those seem like the next most important things for the core that are needed to actually do a good job with the graphical integration. So I'll be thinking about how I want to do those steps next. And with that, I'm going to wrap it up. Thanks for coming and hanging out and checking out what I'm up to, as always. And I will see y'all around the internet sooner or later.